You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. So it's time to see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface and the Telegraph's associate editor for politics, Christopher Hope. They'll be with us from now right up until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. The Times reports that SAS troops are on the ground in Ukraine for the first time during the war and are training local forces in Kyiv. The Eye has spoken to migrants who say they'll still intend to try to cross the English Channel, despite the government's plan to send some of them to Rwanda. The Guardian quotes a senior official from the UN Refugee Agency who believes the Rwanda plan will fail. The Telegraph hears that in line with EU rules, speed-limiting devices may soon be fitted to all new cars on British roads. An investigation by the Mail has found that tens of thousands of civil servants are only working in the office 2 days a week, despite COVID guidance on working from home being scrapped months ago. The Mirror claims that during their visit with the Queen this week, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex promised they'd bring their children on their next trip to the UK. The Financial Times reports on a possible strategy that Twitter may use to stop Elon Musk from buying it in a hostile takeover. The Express says that the good weather over the Easter weekend will generate £2 billion for the economy. And the Star warns of the dangers of cold water on hot days at the beach. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we're joined tonight by Susie Boniface and Christopher Hope. Welcome to you both. Good to see you. Let's start with The Guardian. And the headline there, Rwanda plan will fail. That's according to the UN. Susie, you kick us off.
Yeah, so this is Gillian Triggs, an Assistant High Commissioner at the UN UNHCR, who says that it's only going to probably involve a few hundred people a year at best, and that there's going to be so many legal challenges to it that it's not really going to work. She calls it symbolic more than anything else. And The Guardian here have got information about, for example, if you're going to take things like this to judicial review, there are 2 appeal stages. If you go through an immigration tribunal, there are 3 different stages of appeals. So Boris Johnson's sort of pledge and promise to try to get people on planes to Rwanda within 6 weeks, happily sort of around the time or shortly after the May local elections, looks like it's not going to happen for perhaps 2 years. So, those who are suggesting that this is a headline-grabbing plan to try to get some attention ahead of those local elections, when there's really very little else going for the Conservative Party at the moment, everything else is looking pretty bad for them. They perhaps have sort of some more meat for their arguments now, because it does look like the UN High Commissioner Refugees are saying that this is just unworkable. It's just not going to get off the ground.
Christopher, is the Assistant High Commissioner at the UNHCR correct in describing the scheme as symbolic?
I can imagine the eye rolling in Whitehall at this ruling from the UN. The UN often have this way of getting involved in kind of UK politics in this way, which the Home Office will just probably think, well, we expect this. I mean, the point about this plan is it's a plan. Now, there's no other plan from other similar parties. We yet to see one from Labour. The Lib Dems certainly haven't got one. This is an attempt at delivering on the promise of controlling borders made at the 2016 referendum, and that's why it's happening. The Tories think it goes down very well with its base. It goes down very well with the new red wall seats they won in 2019, and that's the point of it. This here in a front page piece in The Guardian is the dividing line looking into the May 24 general election. I think it's really significant what happened this week. I think this is going to be a debate which people will be having for the next 2 years about whether it's right, and whether even 100 or more than 100 or several hundred make it to Rwanda. The point is that's almost a side point. The key thing is, if it deters little boats coming across illegally from France, it's a success, and that is what we'll wait and see towards the end of the year if that's worked.
But we hear tonight that Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, has put in force a ministerial direction, which means she's overruled her
That's no surprise at all, though, is it? That's no surprise at all, because the way those ministerial directions work is because the plan is unusual, outside of the box thinking. It's costing £120 million. It may cost more than that because it can't be normally scorecarded by the Treasury, i.e. they can't work out what it costs.
But doesn't that mean that it's because it's untested?
That's the point. It is untested. Therefore, Priti Patel had to do a ministerial direction to get it through Whitehall. That had to happen almost.
Do you agree with that, Susie?
I saw some reports over the week, in the past few days, that said there has been some modelling, but it isn't being published. That makes me suspicious. Although it's the first time the UK has tried this, it has been tried by other countries. In Australia, they had about 4,000 refugees were offshored, and it ended up costing about 1.9 million Aussie dollars per head. So if they're trying to sort of what they have modelled, if, for example, it's based on what Israel or Australia did when they were offshoring, it's going to look worse than they want it to look. Certainly that may explain why they're not publishing it if that has been done. But also the civil servants who have said, we need a ministerial direction if you want us to do this, because we can't just go and do it because it's not value for money. They are bound under the Civil Service Code of Conduct to make sure they do get value for money for the taxpayer. Priti Patel isn't bound by quite the same promise or the same sort of guidance, although she's supposed to. But so she's just made an instruction. And what I think is really interesting here is that basically what's happened is, however well this does or doesn't work, like Chris says, it could take 2 years. It could do just 6 weeks, and then there's a reshuffle and Priti Patel's gone and this whole policy is in the bin where it belongs. But however much money is spent on this between now and whenever it ends, that is money that is from the public purse that could be spent on something useful, and it's being spent on what is fundamentally, a headline grabbing dead cat trying to appease the base, and it's not being based on something that's actually going to work. What this policy would do is end up making sure that people traffickers can get double bubble out of every refugee they can try and get across the channel, because they get them coming up through Africa first and then they get them across the channel again. And it gives people an extra incentive to avoid the authorities once they do get into the UK. That's not what we want. We want people who are genuine asylum seekers to work and pay tax and be part of the country.
And Christopher, you're suggesting we could judge the success of this scheme by how frequently it deters people crossing the Channel. But we read in the Eye that Channel migrants are worried about British government's plans to catch them and send them to Rwanda. But they say they will still try to make the crossing to Kent and start a new life.
Yeah, I think this Eye's report is really important. I mean, it sets out the desperation that people feel trying to get across a channel, and that can't be underestimated. These are people who really want to come here. This Sudanese man living in a tent in Calais with his wife, 28, and son 2, tells the Eye. They will attempt to cross the channel again after one failed effort. Sometimes you arrive, sometimes you die, he said, and that shows the desperation. But equally, there's frustration in this country that Priti Patel and preceding Home Secretaries have not done enough to stop the little boats coming across, have not done enough to deter the people traffickers. And that's why this dramatic plan is an attempt to do that. And as I say, the proof will be in the pudding towards the end of the year.
And moving to the Telegraph, we're running out of time, but Priti Patel, according to the article they're running, is facing a mutiny from Home Office staff. Unions representing staff in Whitehall warned of mass walkouts and transfer requests over the ethical and legal implications of the policy. Susie?
Yeah, and, the Home Office has been a basket case for years. It's not just Priti Patel's fault. Previous Home Secretaries have made a mess of it as well. Home Office in general is considered to be a very badly run department. But under Priti Patel, it seems to have not got any better, shall we say, and perhaps got significantly worse. And if they're at the point where people who are working there are desperate to be just about anywhere else, then how long is it possible for someone, whatever Boris Johnson may think of her or however much he may want to reward her Brexit loyalty, how long can he keep her in a job which is fundamentally to control and to organise and to make functional, a very difficult Whitehall department, and where she isn't doing it, and where her staff are literally running away from her? That's the point where you really do have to reshuffle pretty rapidly after the May election.
Or else, Susie, the problem is with the Home Office. It's not Priti Patel. She may be...
Well, she's in charge of it, Chris. It's her job.
But she may be plugged into what people want. She may know more than you do, more than the Home Office do, about what people want to happen, which may be controlling immigration, and she may be responding to that.
Yeah, but she's got to control. She's the chief executive. She's the boss. She's the manager. If the Home
and therefore she's got to tell her.
If the staff are unhappy, it's her job to get that working properly and coherently. And if she can't do it, regardless of politics and
the staff have no right not to refuse to do government policy. They're paid to do that. They can leave or take a transfer, as this article says here. As the FDA David Penman is saying, but the point is that that's what they're there for. And Priti Patel would definitely argue that she is doing what was promised in 2016 or was promised in 2019 in the Tory manifesto. If the officials won't do it for her,
report, she'll be doing it on her own shortly.
Christopher, it doesn't bode well for the policy, though, does it?
Well, I mean, I think the polling is encouraging at the moment. We've seen a polling today from Electoral Calculus find out now saying that 32% of people are in favour, 26% against, and the rest don't know. About right for a new policy. I wonder whether it might catch on. I wonder whether there's a big Twitter row. The usual suspects don't like it, but in fact, out there in Britain, it may be more popular than we think.
OK, Christopher and Susie, for the moment, take a break, cool off, and we'll be back. A poll suggests 2/3 of the public think Boris Johnson should resign if he's given any more fines for breaking lockdown rules. We'll discuss that and more next. You're watching the press preview, still with me, Susie Boniface and Christopher Hope. Let's take a look at the Times and this YouGov poll for the paper, suggesting that 2/3 of Britons want the Prime Minister out if he gets any more party fines. Susie?
Yes, some people will be thinking, only 2/3, what about the rest of them? Others will be thinking, who are these 2/3 of people? How dare they? But what's really interesting, as with all polls, is when you go deeper into it. So aside from who thinks that he should or shouldn't resign, whether he gets 1, 2 or more fines or anything else, only 14% of people polled think he's telling the truth. 14%, right? More than 3/4 of people think he's lying to us. That's quite massive. I've never known that in my lifetime and reporting on politics and so on. I don't know if Chris has. And there are 68% believe he intentionally misled Parliament. Now, if that's the case, including almost half of all Conservative voters, they believe he's intentionally misleading and that he's lied. And I don't know how anyone in any situation comes back from that to be credible at the ballot box. I mean, there's all this stuff about Boris Johnson and his character and what's baked in and what isn't, what voters already knew about him. But to think that in office he's lying to the public and is lying to Parliament, and more than half of everybody thinks that, is quite a mountain for him to climb in 2024, I would suggest.
And Christopher, the stats don't look good. Apart from the fine for being ambushed by cake, as he described it, is thought to have been involved in at least 5 of the remaining 11 events being investigated by the Met. So there's a good chance there could be another fine.
Well, there's definitely a good chance that we think at least one of them, a party for a press aid in November 2020, we think he gets fined for that. That's 2. And there could be, as you say, 4 more. Yeah, it's not a good look, this polling. I think that the Johnson bubble has well and truly burst. We're reporting tomorrow's Telegraph that his face has been expunged from a lot of Tory leaflets. He's got what's known, as Susie will know, as the Jeremy Corbyn treatment from his own party, when he basically just disappears off the face of campaign literature because they're worried about him. They're worried about how this might impact on the local elections as soon as early May. It's a worry, certainly. Next week, Boris Johnson will go to the House of Commons on Tuesday. He's having a mass meeting of his party with Susie's best friend, Priti Patel, next door to him at the meeting to say to his people there, look, that was in the past. That was in the past. I'm now going to take this this government forward in the next 2 years, and we're delivering on the immigration pledge with Priti Patel to my right. That's the idea, and he will almost plead with them to give him a chance. But whether he gets that chance, we'll wait and see. There could be a vote as soon as Wednesday on a parliamentary inquiry into whether he did actually lie, whether he did actually mislead the House. So he's not out of the woods in any sense yet. It may get a lot worse.
We shall see. He does seem to be Teflon coated, it has to be said. But let's see. Let's move on to the Mirror. I've just got time to speak about the Sussexes and their surprise visit. Susie.
Yes, so on their way to the Invictus Games in Holland, Harry and Meghan seem to have had a flying visit to Windsor where they saw the Queen, and where Russell Myers, the royal editor, is reporting, they told her that she would get to see her newest great-granddaughter, Lilibet, sometime soon. Now, if I was 96 years old and had been in hospital this year, I would like sooner to have been on this actual visit, not at some indefinite point in the future. I think saying I'm a relatively big fan of Meghan's. I don't buy into all the criticism that she gets, but I think if you're going to come and see the 96-year-old great-grandmother, you bring the great-grandchildren with you.
Christopher, do you think it's a sign of rifts healing? Very quickly.
Yes, I think so. I think that any grandparent in a family like this will try and be the bigger person to recognise things were said that were maybe shouldn't have been said, and it's all time to move on. Life is just literally too short, particularly for rows like this.